Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, my next guest is a former Navy aviator, former astronaut, and currently serves as the senior senator from Arizona. Please welcome Senator Mark Kelly. Go. Sir, nice to have you back on.
Great to be here.
Over the weekend, the president posted to Pam Bondi, basically, here are my enemies, Attorney General, go get them, okay? Baldly, okay? As someone who served our country in the Navy for 25 years in peacetime and in combat, who took an oath to the Constitution, what does it feel like to see such a flagrant disregard for not just the norms, but for the laws of the United States, that you cannot have the Attorney General of the United States be your personal pit bull to go after your enemies?
Yes, so thank you. Thank you for making that point. In that oath to the Constitution, it's to all of the Constitution. Presidents don't get to pick and choose. And you mentioned the norms. We've never had a president that has spent his time thinking about how he's going to use the Department of Justice to go after political enemies. We've never seen this in our country's history. Now, I guess you could debate whether that was intended for everybody or was that like a DM, I think some people thought.
But what difference? What difference?
It doesn't make
what
any
difference does it make?
It does not.
I think one of your Republican colleagues said, "Hey, it's all out in the open. It's not nefarious. He's saying it out in the open. It can't be bad."
It's really bad, and I think it's fair to say it's shameful that we currently have a president that at every opportunity seems to look for ways to further divide us as a nation. And when you use those levers of power, and as we can see with this presidency, presidents have enormous power to do things. And if they want to, they can easily go outside the bounds of the law. That's why we have a Department of Justice. But when you put people in those jobs that serve a person and not the Constitution, that's where we start to get into trouble. And that's where we are today.
Well, I'm just curious. You're a reasonable fella. You're not, a bomb-throwing crazy here. I assume that you have friends and colleagues across the aisle, as well you should. That's, the Senate's supposed to be a very collegial organization. Publicly, they don't say much. Privately, do they express any concern to you?
They do. And I've had many conversations with my Republican colleagues about this president, how he conducts himself. I wish every day I show up in Washington, and I wish today is the day that somebody's going to grow a spine and do something publicly.
But do they think it's... I mean, not to make you answer for them, but do they think that ultimately it's going to be okay? That this is all terrible, or this or that is terrible, but it's all ultimately going to be okay because he'll be gone someday.
I do hear that. To be fair, I hear we just got to get through these 3.5 years, and then it'll be 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. Right. But that's not the right answer, because the amount of damage that can be done in that period of time is significant.
We're only 8 months in now.
We're 8 months in, and I worry, where are we going to be? Are we going to be more divided than we are today? What happens to these institutions that have been so important to our democracy for nearly 250 years now, that are weakened? And then you've got to worry about who the next president is going to be. And is it somebody that's going to double down on what President Trump has done?
Well, presidents rarely give back power that was achieved by the previous president.
That is true. I think if we get the right person in the White House, I think we will find somebody that will absolutely do that. I am confident, but I also think there's a chance we wind up in a situation where, one of his folks winds up in the White House and then tries to take this to the next whatever the next step is.
Well, the people complain of the government being broken, and it certainly feels that way. It might shut down on October 1st. What's going on with the possibility of government shutdown? What is being asked for on the Republican side, and what are the Democrats fighting for in return in exchange for their votes to stop the shutdown?
Well, let me make this perfectly clear to everybody. This is a fight over the cost of your health care. That's all this is about. The president says no. He says he would prefer a government shutdown. Democrats,
no to what? Like no?
No to fixing the problem with the cost of premiums if you buy your health care on the exchange.
Okay.
That's the fight right now. So it's not a fight about whether we should keep the government open or not. There are many of us that want to reduce the cost of your health care that this president, when he passed that big bill, made a lot worse. And people are going to start seeing these health care premiums go up substantially. They're already getting letters. And it's unaffordable for people.
So what would this do? What would the Democrats be asking to do to the Affordable Care Act to actually...
So there are some premium help that we could provide to the American people. That's what we are asking for. And the president said, no, I took away that help to those premiums when I passed that legislation. So I'm just saying, no, we're not going to do this, and would prefer to shut the government down. So this becomes, a question about the cost of your health care. But what it also means is, how does your rural hospital stay open or not if you live in a rural area? Or when we get further down the road here, does somebody's grandmother get pushed to the curb when she was in the nursing home? So those are the things we are fighting for. And right now, to all of that stuff, the president says no. He also doesn't want to talk about it. Now, he's going to have a meeting with Jeffries and Chuck Schumer here this week. But for a while, he didn't even want to discuss it.
Senator, political violence is a deeply personal and painful issue for you. Your wife, as a sitting congresswoman, Gabby Giffords, survived an assassination attempt on her life in 2011. And, since the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, you've been speaking a lot, not just only as a politician, but as a family member and as a husband, talking about where this leads us. And I'm curious, what do you want people to know about how to come back from this brink, and what happens if we don't?
Well, let me start by saying I know something about this. As you outlined, in 2011, I got a call. I was in Houston, Texas. Gabby was in Tucson meeting with her constituents, and I got a call from Gabby's chief of staff, who just very simply says to me, Gabby's been shot. Didn't have a lot of information. We hung up from that call. A little while later, I get another call from her, and she gave me really devastating news that she'd been shot in the head. And later that day, on an airplane from Houston to Tucson, I found out through the media they pronounced her dead. And that lasted for about 30 minutes. I remember I was there with my kids and my mom, and I got up, went into the bathroom, and I was just crushed. And about 10 days ago, I went right back to that day, thinking about Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's wife, and the devastating news that she received, and how this is such a punch in the gut. Now, to some extent, I was able to recover from it. Gabby was alive, and her husband died. Their kids will never know their father. They're so young. So this is, really, really challenging for these people. Nobody deserves this. And I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk on much. But one thing I agreed with is he had every right to be there, to debate people about the issues that he cared about. I was on the other side of a lot of those issues. But one thing I did agree is that he had freedom of speech rights. And I would go to war to defend that. And we're in a challenging time here. I mean, I think one thing we could do if we're trying to make this better, there's one thing I can think for everybody to do is put down their phone. Don't look at social media. It just makes this worse.
In 2011, That's interesting, because in 2011, we all know what sort of a carbonated acidic pool a lot of social media can be. In 2011, it existed, but it wasn't what it is today.
It wasn't the same, and the hatred didn't really show up on places like Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all those.
It showed up like a commodified hatred. That,
yeah.
There's money to be made in engagement. And also, I often think that our country is under psychological attack.
And to reinforce biases in people. And when you reinforce those biases, you separate us further as a nation. Back in 2011, I mean, we would get, Gabby's office would get phone calls, and they were quite horrible. But it was a phone call. And other people didn't see this. Now you've got this reinforcement in this bias that is just separating our nation to the point where I'm not so sure, if we go too far, we're not going to be able to get back from it. So if folks can just put down the social media, try to disconnect and try to have like real conversations with real people over these issues, we'd get to a much better place.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're back with Senator Mark Kelly, everybody.